Good afternoon, everybody. We are here at Capitol Park in Milton with Attorney General candidate ImnotRummy. With this short section, we're going to be asking Attorney General candidate ImnotRummy a few questions so the press and everybody can get to know him a little more. ImnotRummy, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. How's it going today?
I'm doing fine myself. Before we start, is there anything that you would like to say to people who are indecisive about voting for Attorney General?
I have one message for the people of Ridgeway who are interested in learning what our candidates are about. Go look at the campaign channels. By the time this video is out, they should release the ability to go look at the candidates' platforms. But to those who are here for Ridgeway's revival, let's make Ridgeway great again. Find my platform at www.makeridgewaygreatagain.com.
All right, that sounds good. So let's get into our first question. What issues do you see within the Justice Department, and how do you plan on resolving them?
Of course, currently the main issue in the Justice Department, more than anything, I'd say, is a lack of administrative and developer support, which is something that we were told is based on the revival. The Trello boards, which, for example, are dependent on case filings, stuff like that, have not been properly authorized to the entirety of the department. So, getting those back up to speed and getting the administrative functions of the department going again, so we can get cases rolling, and of course, all of that sort is very important. I'd say that the second issue the department faces the most is manpower. We have very competent and very powerful bureaucrats, career people in here who have dedicated most of their time to the Justice Department. However, we need to start creating forms. If we're speaking internally in the department, more than anything, it's creating opportunities for people to join and making it also accessible to people who may not necessarily know the legal field that well but have an interest in learning. So, more paralegal programs, more research programs, more job interest programs of that sort that I'm sure we'll get into later in the interview.
That sounds very interesting. So, moving on, what qualifications and experience uniquely prepares you to serve as Attorney General? How do these set you
Of,
apart from your opponents?
of course, my entire career in Ridgeway, besides a small time when I first started, which was in private practice, has been in the Department of Justice. I'm a career member of the Department of Justice, starting my career as a state attorney and having risen to the position of Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division. I believe I know the department better than any other candidate who's currently running, and I'm confident that my experience, not only working with the department, but working with its coordinating agencies, is going to be something that is going to help us move effectively and execute on our mandate from day one.
So, with your position in the Department of Justice, what is one thing that you learned after joining?
Of course, I'd say when you first join the department, especially as a state attorney, it's we're going to prosecute, prosecute, prosecute. What I think you learn once you actually get in there and start taking these cases is that each prosecution is different, and it's important to consider the facts of every case. There are some crimes which are worth prosecuting, and there are some crimes where, if, of course, the state will still prosecute, but where the community member is demonstrating real regret, real resolve. Accidents do happen at times. A more empathetic approach is also necessary. A balanced way of executing justice, I'd say. The second thing I'd say is, of course, we have some of the greatest legal minds in Ridgeway. When you work in the department, you get to experience that. So, of course, just understanding the need to further create a legal community that wants to continue engaging within our community.
All right. What specific policies or initiatives would you implement to address the rising crime rates?
So, the first thing we need to do, more than anything, is we need to refocus our resources when it comes to fighting crime on the three major ones. Number one, random killing. Okay? No citizen should be walking down the street and getting mowed down by a gun randomly. Gang on gang crime happens. Police on criminal crime happens. But too many, since the revival, too many reports have come in about innocent bystanders being killed left and right. So we need to prosecute those people heavily. Secondly, we got to protect our businesses more than anything. Trucking, private industry, anyone who's conducting business within Ridgeway or in the more practical sense of the game is carrying a lot of money around should feel safe to be able to transact. We need to make sure that when there is an incident of any kind where a crime is committed against a business, whether it be a trucker, whether it be someone selling something, we need to make sure that we prosecute that crime and, of course, when we can, help recover what the victim may have lost. Thirdly, and finally, zero tolerance for corruption. We got to make sure that all around Ridgeway, no matter what position you have, no matter which friends you have, that you can't get away with doing the wrong thing. If you can't do the crime, sorry, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime.
Yes, I can definitely relate to the random killing, and I'm sure others can. I know I have been random killed since the revival probably 4 times, and even just trucking, doing normal civilian business, I mean, people are hostile, so I think that is something that most people can get behind. So, moving on,
Do.
how will you revitalize our Justice Department?
So, the first thing we'll do is consolidate resources. Other candidates have talked about how they want to open up new divisions, open up new parts of the department, but the truth of the matter is, currently with Revival, there is a smaller legal community. And I'm sure we'll be able to foster one as the game booms back. However, at the moment, what we need to do is we need to consolidate everyone who's actively in the department, make the organizational structure a lot less bureaucratic, a lot smaller, and give members in the department mandates to act on. So, we need to make sure that each division of the department is running to the maximum of its capacity without overburdening it with each one with new responsibilities. A lot of candidates make promises about, oh, we're going to add a new division. I heard from an opposing candidate that they wanted to make a division for state security, or that we're going to increase our oversight of law enforcement. I disagree with all of that. I think we need to, for the moment, and that might be just because I have a more personal understanding of the department, for the moment, we gotta make sure each employee of the department is focusing on an actionable item that matters, something that will make a difference for the average resident in Ridgeway.
All right, that sounds good. As Attorney General, how will you maintain independence from political influence when pursuing investigations or prosecutions involving high profile individuals or organizations?
Talking about high profile individuals, I assume you're referring to politicians. Nothing wrong with having
Um,
friends. Statutorily, the law requires that whenever a politician or a candidate is investigated, that a special counsel be appointed. If the need to ever appoint one came up, I would do so without reservation. As for businesses or other high profile crime networks, all I can say is I'll be the toughest attorney general on crime you've met, whether you are random killing people or whether you're organizing a multifaceted illegal firearms operation in cohorts with corrupt officials.
Great. Yes, with your experience in the Justice Department, have you ever prosecuted a high profile individual before?
As a member of the criminal division and as a state attorney, I do not comment on cases of that sort since it would be inappropriate for me to categorize who is a high profile individual or not in a prosecutorial sense. However, if you want to include that information in your interview, I would happily redirect you to the Justice Department's Office of Public Affairs, but as a private citizen, I cannot possibly comment. That would be unethical.
All right, what steps would you take to improve transparency and public trust in the Justice Department's decision-making process?
I think we really have to work with the legislature towards passing more public accountability acts. For example, I believe on day one, the most appropriate thing to do would to be conduct a department-wide audit to ensure that, for example, the department and subsidiary agencies are documenting everything that affects day-to-day employees or residents of the department, such as major department actions against or towards someone, employment decisions, whether you are hired or terminated in any agency. It should be well documented, which, of course, it usually is. The law has it that way. But sometimes things fall through the books, and that's why it's important to maintain our Office of Government Affairs in a really good state. Make sure that when it's appropriate to conduct an audit or when it's appropriate to conduct investigation, that we do so. At the same time, I also think that accountability is incredibly important, but it's also important to keep the Attorney General accountable. So, myself, a few days from now, from excessive oversight. We have some great law enforcement leaders. We have, and that's not only the head leaders of the departments, but leadership across the respective divisions in each one. And we got to make sure that they also aren't being over encumbered or choked by a overzealous official.
Great. So on the part of public trust, would you host events in the Justice Department to increase public trust?
Of course, one of the main things that I think we need to do across whether you're the attorney general, whether you're the secretary of state, whether you're the governor or any head of any department, you need to have hard public outreach. I plan to host at least 1 to 2 hours of office hours a week where any citizen can come to me and come express their ideas or disagreements with what we're doing in the Justice Department. A lot of people usually forget that one man can only have so many ideas. One man can only come up with so many good things. However, if we actually open the door to our residents to have a line of communication with the Justice Department, we'll know number one, what their day to day concerns are, number two, the day to day problems they face, whether it be a DOJ or DOJ subsidiary related action. Number three, and I think also very important, what suggestions they may have. There's a saying which is very common, which is sometimes you need a fresh perspective. People from outside the Justice Department can make at times equally as important suggestions as someone as from inside the Justice Department.
That is very good, and I especially now, not many people know about the Justice Department, so I think your plans to increase public trust and transparency could definitely change for the better. How would you address and prevent misconduct or corruption within the Justice Department?
So we have an Office of Government Affairs. I would, of course, I'm a big fan of the current Assistant Attorney General for Government Affairs, Mr. Toby. I would ensure that his office remains autonomous and should the day ever come, which it won't because I'm a very ethical person, should the day ever come that he needs to, for example, investigate the Deputy Attorney General or Assistant Attorney General, I will make sure to hand down my statutory authority to appoint a special counsel to him should a conflict of interest ever arise in a investigation that needs to go on internally. But the Office of Government Affairs, of course, is responsible for keeping both the department and the entire government accountable. We do scrutinize ourselves more heavily, though, I'd say. I'm sorry, if I may add one last thing, I think it's important to note that for the department to be executing justice throughout the state, it's going to have the cleanest shop. I'll leave that question with that.
All right, sounds good. Alrighty, moving on to the next question. What role do you see the Justice Department playing in reforming police practices across the county?
Of course. So there's one thing we got to get clear first. Usually, when politicians talk about reforming police practices, they always talk it with a one narrowed view. There are incidents of officer misconduct, of course, but there are also the day to day realities that law enforcement officers in our state face. All right. So I think it'd be important on day one to get everyone together, get all of the law enforcement leadership together, have a meeting, and say, what are the problems you are all facing in terms of potential internal handlings, misconduct, and where can we help? Once we get a clear picture from law enforcement, we'll also, of course, continue to maintain our misconduct tip line, where you can, without repercussions, report a law enforcement officer who has done something to you. But we'll make sure to combine both interests when it comes to understanding these issues. I believe that we have some of the strongest law enforcement agencies across the real estate genre, and as such, I would further like to believe that I don't think I know for a fact because I know the people who work at these agencies that it's a very small minority that sometimes turn out to be the bad apple in the good tree. But the line for reporting will always remain open. It will always remain secure, so no repercussions are faced to anyone who reports misconduct. But most importantly, should the department ever discover misconduct on anyone's end, whether it be a law enforcement officer, a politician, a judge, a internal department member, it will always prosecute it to the furthest of its ability. Since the department has a higher threshold and holds individuals to a higher standard, if they serve in public office or if they're a public servant. That's our policy. That will be our policy at least when I'm Attorney General.
All right. I have a follow-up question. So, what is stopping Department High Command from just lying to cover themselves?
I'd say that we have a very good team currently. We have a team of people who none of them are longtime friends, just colleagues, but everyone is very committed to seeing the department improve. And I have no doubt that if there was any misconduct on my end, on Attorney General Toby's end, on Acting Attorney General Commander's end, that we would not hesitate to report one another without incident or take the necessary measures. The Department of High Command of the Department of Justice is currently not a friend group. It is a group comprised of career members of the department.
All right. And finally, what strategies would you implement to strengthen partnerships between law enforcement agencies?
Well, the first thing is we need active and clear communication. So I would issue a memorandum on day one requiring that department leadership, in this case most relevant to law enforcement, the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, the Deputy Attorney General, and the Attorney General are all actively in communication with members of leadership in these agencies. We also make sure to have a clear line when it comes to things the department won't tolerate. As we spoke in this interview, misconduct is one of them. But most importantly, we open ourselves to this leadership, to these agencies' leaderships. Usually, DOJ has come off at times when it's a new politician or when it's someone who doesn't understand the inner workings of the department or these other agencies is very hostile. However, I believe it's also important that this department offers resources to help these agencies when they want to combat an issue such as rising crime, such as any of the issues we covered today, because the department can only do one part of the job. It's important that when someone becomes attorney general that they realize that cooperation is the biggest strength of the DOJ, not running it solo. So
All
opening the
right.
department's resources to these agencies when they need it.
So I have a question from myself. Are you, do you, uh, sorry, let me reword that. Are you confident that you are able to solve best for all these problems than your other candidates?
I am more than confident because a vote for I'm Not Rummy is a vote to make Ridgeway great again. And making Ridgeway great again is about assembling the dream team of people who are going to put the time, the effort, and bring the expertise to put our state back on top of the Rose State stage.
All right. Before we end this interview, can you share, it could be anywhere in Ridgeway, just a personal experience?
A personal experience in what sense? In playing the game, in working.
Well, your just greatest achievement in Ridgeway.
I'd say my greatest achievement is my proud career at the Department of Justice, where a few weeks ago I had the honor of becoming Assistant Attorney General after having served as a state attorney. And I'd say that is the greatest thing anyone could ever wish for, seeing recognition of their work, their expertise. Not everyone in Ridgeway is a career position climber. Not everyone in Ridgeway is a politician. I am not a politician. I am simply a community member who, like many others, wants this community to improve. And against what early on a lot of people thought were all the odds stacked against me, I've united a coalition of people who believe that not only the people with the largest friend groups, not only the people with all the clout can take up these offices and lead them into greatness. So I would say that's my biggest achievement.
All right. So for everybody at home, what is one final remark that you would like them to know?
The last remark I have for everyone at home is our state will get to the top again. Will become the best again. Ridgeway was the top pro state for a very long time. We fell from grace for a bit, but now we're on the upward trend. To those who are tired, those who want our game to be the best, I only have one message for you: make Ridgeway great again. And I invite you all to read my full platform in detail at makeridgewaygreatagain.com. Thank you very much.